Welcome back to the cEDH podcast. I'm Blake.
I'm Chase, and today we're going to be talking about the news that dropped from MagicCon Vegas.
So, what did happen at MagicCon Vegas, Chase?
Okay, so I guess first and foremost, before we get into the stuff of MagicCon Vegas, part of the reason we're doing this is one, this is something that happened just this past weekend, and two, it doesn't really seem like there were a lot of bigger events for us to report on.
Yeah.
So we're going to take today and kind of go over the announcements that happened this past weekend. And there was a lot of different things, whether it actually pertains to cEDH or not. We don't know because not everything has been spoiled from the stuff that was released. And then there is some new rule change type stuff that I don't think everyone's just kind of looking at it and going, how's this going to impact the format potentially, or what can we do with it? But I don't think it's going to have that big of an impact, but we'll see. And if it has a bigger impact than what we think, let us know in the comments below, and like and subscribe.
I'm at it every time, please.
So during this weekend's event, probably the biggest thing as far as what is more relevant to what's to come within the next couple months, they actually started releasing some of the spoilers from the newest set, which is going to be Edge of Eternities. And so they did kind of release some of the cards that are going to be in it, things to look forward to. I'm just kind of scrolling through this really quickly. It looks like they're reprinting the Shocklands, which is always a good thing, being able to get those out and into the format. And that's actually be huge for standard and things like that. I think that's going to be really awesome. But, just having these cards readily available for players to pick up, driving the prices down. So that way, people that are getting into cEDH or whatever, if they can't afford the duels or whatever, these are always going to be a go-to, cheaper option. And they work just as well.
Yeah.
So I do think that is cool. It looks like some pretty cool arts. One of the cards though that I kind of want to go over real quick that we were just kind of briefly discussing before we sat down and recorded is the new Tezzeret Planeswalker.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are not aware of what this new Tezzeret does, Tezzeret Cruel Captain. So for 3 colorless, it has 4 loyalty. Whenever an artifact you control enters, put a loyalty counter on Tezzeret. It has a 0 activated ability, untap target artifact or creature. If it's an artifact creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. -3, search your library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And then it has a -7 ability. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target artifact you control. If it's not a creature, it becomes a 0/0 robot artifact creature.
Yeah. No, I think that this card's going to be really, really good. I was talking to Leo, and his main thing is he plays Selvala, so the ability for this to come down immediately for a 0, untap your Selvala, and then put a +1/+1 counter on it. The ability to basically use the -3 ability to go search out a Phyrexian Dreadnought, and then put that into play, and then Selvala makes 12, 13 mana, whatever it is. And then also just the ability to use this to untap things like the One Ring for 0. So it's just it's pretty cool, honestly. I think that this card's definitely going to see some cEDH play. It really feels like colorless has been getting a lot of fun new tools here recently. So
right.
I'm curious to see if we start to see a colorless deck pop up more often.
No, I agree with you. I think it'll be interesting to see that. I don't think that this, even though you can play it turn 1 potentially, I don't see it being as impactful as when we got the One Ring. That's slotted into every deck pretty much. It's proven its worth. I don't know if this goes into every single deck, even with it being colorless. But, where you're even talking about Leo's discussion with Selvala, as you were talking about that, I think something that came to mind for me, I don't know if this would be a Sisay card or not, but having the ability to, kind of going ahead and either buff Sisay, giving Sisay the +1/+1 counter in order to, tutor something out, or if you're playing, the tutor chain stuff, being able to untap a Sovala or untap a Bloom Tender, untap a Fabro Elder, like those things in order to like get some other like triggers, because like that's like a really relevant part of the text on Tyvar, being, you know, not just the haste enabling, but like being able to like do the activated ability on Tyvar to untap a dork. Like if that is good enough in the tutor chain version of Sisay, why would this not be kind of in that same spot where you can untap your things and kind of go from there? Now, I don't think the -3 would be as impactful in that particular deck, but I don't know. Um, I do think that this is an interesting one, and we'll kind of have to see how it plays out. But you know, I'm excited to see like lower costing planeswalkers and like that's not being like just restricted to like one or two colors like how Tezzeret normally is.
Yeah, no, I think that this is cool. Honestly, I'm not sure what other decks it'll see play in. I'm trying to think of anything else, but I don't know. Overall, I think it's still just a really good card.
Now, when I mentioned earlier the rules change stuff, this is the card that they spoiled for that in particular. So the card is called the Sarima. So for 3, it's a 1 colorless and 2 white. It's a legendary artifact spacecraft. And when the Sarima enters, search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And then one of the new mechanics of the set, Station. So it has tap another creature you control, put a charge counter equal to its power on this spacecraft. Station only as a sorcery. It's an artifact creature at 7+ counters on it. And then whenever it does have the 7+ counters, it has flying. It's a 5/5. Other tapped legendary creatures you control have indestructible. And so, you know, what kind of prompted the rule change in this is that they are going to make it to where the any kind of legendary artifact that's a spacecraft or a vehicle can now be played as the commander.
Yeah.
And I know earlier you were kind of looking through some of the legendary vehicles that we currently have available. What else did you find within that?
I went through a few of them. So like this it's called like Golden Argosy. I don't even know how you say that, but it has, whenever it attacks, exile each creature that accrued at this turn, return them to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It's colorless, so I don't know how good that's going to be, but it does give you the opportunity to do like some like potentially like some flicker or like bounce type shenanigans. I don't think that it's going to see like a ton of play. This one's probably the one that I think if any will see the most play. But it's Jackdaw, and it's Izzet colors, and says whenever Jackdaw deals combat damage to a player, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw cards equal to the number of artifact, or equal to draw a card for each artifact you control, and it has crew 3.
Oh, okay.
I honestly think that could be pretty relevant, especially like if you're able to do something where like maybe you're making a lot of treasures. We're in an artifact heavy format anyways because we play lots of free rocks. Honestly, you may be able to fill your hand up with like some crazy Cheerios and do like I don't know, maybe a Jorah type situation. But if this just comes down, swings, gets you some damage in, you can just pitch your whole hand, see another 7. You, because of the colors that you're in, you do have access to like Underworld Breach, Brain Freeze, stuff like that. So that's at least relevant.
Almost like a vehicle, like Storm kind of thing. That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
because like as far as like you brought up Cheerios, like I think the things that come to mind to me, like all the kobolds, like all the Memnites, like Clown Car potentially type things like that. Kind of going in the deck, being able to like, I mean, you couldn't crew with the Clown Car, but like if you had to like just cast stuff for like either storming off or whatever. Yeah, I could kind of see that.
Yeah, and then this one, the RMS Titanic. Let me get it pulled up. Yep, RMS Titanic. It's 3 in a red, and then it has flying and trample. And when it deals combat damage to a player, sack it and create that many treasure tokens. So I mean, it's kind of weird. It's just slow ramp in the zone. I don't necessarily think that it's going to end up being something that's like super relevant. But if it's just a way for you to get like a big burst of treasures, I'm assuming if you were going to play this, you'd probably be playing something like Magda in the 99. It instantly having access to like 7 treasures to put a Magda activation would be like pretty nutty. So I don't think that that's terrible. Let me pull this up. The Belligerent. So It's 2, and then is it again. Whenever it attacks, create a treasure token. Until end of turn, you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. I'm just assuming that this is probably going to be like some sort of like Sensei's Top type deck where you're just constantly like casting the top, playing things that are going to like reduce the amount of reduce the cost of like artifacts, stuff like that. Allow you to like pick up your whole deck and then potentially like storm off, do something there. Yeah, in the Indomitable, so it's 2 blue. Trample. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Crew 3, and you may cast the Indomitable from your graveyard as long as you control 3 or more tapped pirates and or vehicles. Same thing. I could see this potentially just being like some kind of like flyer type deck or whatever, just constantly, or maybe the pirates, something like that, and just making lots of treasure. Like if you have like maybe Malcolm in the 99, drawing lots of cards. It's mono blue, so it's kind of limited on like what it's going to be able to do. I don't really know what you would do to like win. I mean, I'm just not 100% sure, but it's still like an option. And then this one I thought was pretty sick. The Weatherlight Completed. So it's 2 mana, it's colorless. And as long as the Weatherlight Completed has 4 more Phyresis counters on it, it's a Phyrexian creature in addition to its other types. When a creature you control dies, put a Phyresis counter on the Weatherlight Completed, then draw a card if it has 7 or more Phyresis counters on it. If it doesn't, scry 1. So I feel like there would probably be some way too that you could just loop some creature dying repeatedly, like over and over and over. Maybe like some sort of +1/+1 type counter effect, or some like what is like the Lesser Manticore type stuff. Just something with like Undying, Persist, things like that. And then being able to like draw through your whole deck. And then I don't know what the win would necessarily be in that instance, but I mean, I feel like if you have every card in your deck, it's kind of hard to not win at that point. But I just don't know. I don't know in colorless what you would be doing to.
I think if anything, if you're like in these colorless things where you're able to kind of draw out your deck in this way, it's probably going to be some kind of like Aetherflux line.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, if you're able to kind of dig down, assemble some of your pieces and like cast a bunch of stuff, get Aetherflux out, like continue to cast things and then shoot the table. Like typically if I see a line like that, it's more so going to be like Aetherflux and Mystic Forge and like Foundry Inspector and then like top or something like that in order to be able to like draw a card, put top on, cast it from the top and do that type of loop without it being a Ballista Citadel type thing. So that I think that's kind of the main stuff. Now I'm sure there's some other things that it could be done with like grinding station potentially, like if you were able to like somehow continue to put an artifact into play and just like start milling everyone out. But I think if anything, or sorry, go
no,
ahead.
I was gonna say that actually would be kind of neat, like if you were able to do some sort of combo like that where you have like some kind of artifact that comes into play, untapping the grinding station with like Persist, Undying, something like that, but it can't get a counter. Yeah. And then you sack it, it goes back, and you just mill the whole table out that way, like some kind of neat combo line there. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and even as we're kind of going through some of these, like it's a lot of reaching to make some of these things work. But I think the importance of this rule change is I mean, we might not see anything immediately, but it opens up a really interesting design space for like future sets to be thinking about this, as far as like, oh, if we're going to include legendary vehicles or spacecrafts or whatever, you know, that might pertain to the set, you know, these are now going to be cards that we might start be thinking like, oh, these could potentially be good commanders. And now, so like it's a different way of approaching our format, or it's not really a different way of approaching our format, but it's taking what we've done and going, oh, now we have new tools or new things that are disposable that we didn't have access to before. So I do think that that's kind of neat. Those I feel like are the main things kind of coming out of this set. Like they did, I think, spoil some of the pre-cons and things like that. But I think for the sake of just kind of moving on, like I feel like we talked about the two main things that we see from it, or at least the three main things being the shocks, the legendary spacecraft, and Tezzeret there. Yeah. So that's all that I have on that part of the news. Now, the next big announcement that they made, they actually went on ahead and highlighted a couple of the new sets that will be coming out next year. So it looks like we're going to be returning to Lorwyn and Strixhaven. So Lorwyn, for me, that's more like a nostalgic thing because that's whenever I got really big into Magic. As
Mhm.
far as um, when I first started, was like around the time of the original Ravnica set, and then Time Spiral and Future Sight and things like that. But Lorwyn was the one that I was just like, oh, this shit's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so they haven't spoiled anything from either of the sets, but I guess this is kind of more of a speculation thing for me. So I'll start with Lorwyn since I've already kind of started on it. So with this, it's a lot of tribal synergy type stuff. So like if kind of pulling this up real quickly, the things that I remember from it, there's a lot of elves, there's a lot of goblins, Kithkin, which are kind of like hobbits in a way, but they don't have that hobbit subtype, so I don't think we'll see synergy with that. Giants, merfolk. There's a lot of different things within this set, and it was actually the set that originally introduced planeswalkers, as far as like having the planeswalker as a new card type and things like that. So I'm just kind of speculating some stuff on this. Like I expect like maybe they might do something different with planeswalkers. I think even before we started the channel, and they were talking about going back to this set after all the like the aftermath sets and the Phyrexian sets and whatnot, or March of the Machines and whatnot. How they kind of redid things with planeswalkers and made it to where it's only like 1%. I think Lorwyn's a good opportunity to kind of backtrack and go, no, I think people might want these things. Let's include more and more in the set. So I don't know. That might be interesting. I think that having shapeshifters, that's another creature type from the set that was kind of classic.
Mhm.
But I think that's going to be the one that's most relevant to cEDH because most of the shapeshifters have the changeling ability.
Yeah.
Magda already plays changelings.
Yeah.
So we might see some things coming out of this set that kind of goes into that deck. Yay. The one thing neither one of us play, and it might get some support. Um, a lot of the times of those cards, like the elementals, they had the evoke ability, and we're already. I mean, the two biggest ones I feel like that see play are what endurance, and then sometimes the mole drifter to like ETB draw some cards, and like it's rarely used.
Is it the same thing like Solitude? No?
Yeah, so Solitude, Subtlety, like that line of it that came from the Modern Horizon set, like those see the most play.
Mhm.
Endurance being the one that
Yeah.
sees the most out of all of it.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think we might see some more abilities like that. I think that would be kind of cool. Maybe giving some additional support to other decks, whether it be elves or fairies or goblins, just because people like that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not that'll all be like cEDH viable, but I don't know. I think that's gonna be. I think it's gonna be an interesting set, and I'm kind of looking forward to going back to it. So
yeah, I think that'd be really cool. I'm curious to see how the changelings, like if we get new shapeshifters and changelings and stuff, I'm curious to see how relevant they are just in the current landscape of how things are, how things are. I wonder if we'll get any like new legendary changelings, things like that.
Oh, that'd be kind of cool.
But yeah, I don't know.
Like Morphon.
Yeah, Morphon. Yeah, like stuff like that.
I know that you'll want a changeling that is a silence effect.
Fuck, I want an enchantment.
It will have the hue, like even if you do the Cavern of Souls for human, if you get that, you'll cast it and it will see the human typing. So
my goal, or I say goal, I don't have any impact on this, so it doesn't matter. My hope is that they print some 3-mana enchantment that is a silence effect.
No,
I just need that. God, I need a 3-mana or less enchantment that is a silence effect that I can swing with Zerg, put it into play, and then I can go for a win. That is all I ask.
And then as far as the other set goes, now I really had not been playing that much. Whenever I was in my downtime, that's whenever Strixhaven had been released. So I don't know as much about that set. But what we did kind of discuss before we started recording was like, some of the things that are relevant in this. It's like the Magecraft abilities, like probably revisiting something like that, or maybe even making a mechanic that's very similar to the Magecraft stuff. Like that has some relevance at times within our format, whether it be like storm decks that are utilizing like the Stormkiln Artist, or was it what's the is it commander? Is it Veyra that has Magecraft? It's not as
Veyran?
maybe it's not as popular anymore, especially now that we have like Ral and
Yeah.
VV and things like that. But even it saw play for a minute.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that card sees play and stuff like Krarksaka and decks like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or I mean, and obviously like the go-to thing that most people might recognize, like in like Abzan builds or things like that, is going to be like the Witherbloom Apprentice and the Chain of Smog type Professor Onyx. Like, so I'm kind of expecting to see effects either Magecraft coming back or something very similar to it.
Yeah, just newer, like a newer,
like an updated version of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that those are the only things that I can see coming from those sets, both the Strixhaven and the Lorwyn being more impactful to cEDH.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be really good. Like, I know a lot of people were really, really, really excited for a return to Lorwyn, and then when it spoiled it, like we were going to have lots of universes beyond. There were some players that were like not happy because they were really excited for a return to Lorwyn. So I'm curious to see what comes of the return. I'm hoping that we get plenty of stuff that's gonna like make the current player base like pretty happy with the return and like probably call back to a lot of that old stuff.
Right.
You know, if it's just all brand new stuff that like has kind of no relevance to any of the old stuff, I feel like that'd be a little bit disappointing. So I really hope that they do play into some of that and just see how it goes. But
Yeah.
I am excited for it.
Well, you kind of gave me a really good segue here because you mentioned the Universes Beyond stuff, and that was another announcement that they made for MagicCon Vegas, where they released our first look at Aang. So for the Avatar set coming out at the end of this year. So there's a front and a back side, and I guess I kind of forgot to say that about Strix, because I think that was one of the first sets where you actually got the like those dual-sided cards where you could cast one or the other side. Forgot about that one, but we're gonna move on because you're doing the same. You see a double face card here. So Avatar Aang. So it starts out in Sans Black. So for a red, green, white, and a blue, you have a legendary creature human avatar ally that's a 4/4 with flying and firebending 2. And then whenever you waterbend, earthbend, firebend, or airbend, draw a card. Then, if you've done all 4 this turn, transform Avatar Aang. And he transforms into Aang, Master of the Elements. That is a 6/6 with flying. Spells you cast cost Wooburg less to cast. At the beginning of each upkeep, you may transform Aang, Master of the Elements. If you do, you gain 4 life, draw 4 cards, put 4+1/+1 counters on Aang, on him, and he deals 4 damage to each opponent.
Yeah, whenever I saw this, and I think I talked to you about this, I wonder if this is going to be like another food chain type deck where because we don't know what any of those keywords mean yet,
right?
Or at least I don't think we do, unless somebody like cracked a case early or something.
Like maybe if each one has some kind of enter the battlefield type ability, and then that can allow you to kind of like draw through your deck and things like that.
Yeah. Because I mean, in a 5-color deck, you can pick up like it. You don't have to activate all 4 of them if you don't want to. Like it says, like whenever. Like if you've done all 4 this turn, transform Aang. But if for some reason, like if you can just loop one of them, like let's say it's really easy to water bend, then you loop the water bending over and over and over, draw through your whole deck, and then you're able to basically just assemble a win there. Like I was thinking that potentially if it's like maybe it's like a food chain type deck where you have the squee and then maybe firebending is related to like something about a creature dying, or I'm not sure, but you loop through with casting squee, like making infinite colors of mana, drawing through your whole deck, and then potentially cast like Thassa's Oracle, or maybe it's not that, and like we figure out that the front side's really not that good, but the back side's like pretty busted. Like we go into a very heavy, some sort of like Aang, Master of the Elements, like heavy strategy. Like you want to get to the backside as quick as possible. And then maybe you just don't ever resolve that upkeep ability to draw the cards. Maybe you want the cost reduction.
Well, something I think is interesting while we're talking about this part is that it's at the beginning of each upkeep.
Yes.
So if these abilities are something that can trigger on each turn, if you're able to, like, say you go into your turn and you're able to do all 4 and like you draw 4 cards and then you transform them into the avatar, like that basically the avatar state.
Yeah.
All right. And then let's say, because our format the way it is now, it's either about winning on top of other people's turns or doing as much as you can on other people's turns. It's like you go into that turn, okay, I'm gonna at the beginning of your upkeep, I'm gonna transform Aang back to Avatar Aang. And then I'm gonna draw 4 more cards and put 4+1/+1 counters on it. And then before your turn ends, I'm gonna do all 4 of the bending abilities. I'm gonna transform them again.
Draw 4 more cards.
And draw and then on your upkeep, I'm going to transform it again. So like you're going to draw like
1 turn cycle. How many cards would that be? 4.
You're drawing like 8 because you would draw like if we read this correctly,
24,
like whenever we do one of these, we're drawing a card. So if you're doing that 4 times in a turn, you're drawing 4 cards there. And then at the upkeep, you're drawing 4 more cards. So 8, 16, 24.
And then by the time it comes back to you, it would transform on your upkeep too. So 32.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty busted.
That's how it goes. Because it doesn't say anything of like once per turn. It doesn't say anything as far as sorcery speed. It just says anytime you do it.
Yeah. That's pretty cracked. That'd be
and
cool.
It's this turn. Like I said, it's not your turn. So if you have ways of doing the bending abilities at like instant speed or whatever it might be, that's stupid.
Oh, yeah.
That would be real good.
What would I wonder if you could pair this with something like Gigantha. I don't know how that would work. I don't know. Like I'm just thinking here, like if you can add a companion deck and you pair this with something like Gigantha. I wonder how that would be.
I feel like that's the only one you could pair it with, though.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because then everything costs Wooburg less, and then you can also add Wooburg. So I wonder if there would be like some sort of like fun little shenanigans you could do there.
Maybe.
You just get to cast all your spells for.
Oh, and you could get back to your turn and fucking take someone out because it'd have so many +1/+1 counters with flying that you could probably just swing and like kill all your players. And
now this is something. Whenever he transforms, would he keep the +1/+1 counter?
Yes, I would assume so because it never says anything about exiling him and returning him to the battlefield. So it just transforms. He flips over. So.
That's fine.
So, I mean, we may have just talked about a way to make him really busted, but that's all just speculation stuff because we don't know how these bending abilities are supposed to work.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, if it said you have to exile him and then return him as Aang, then that would be a different story, but these counters just stack.
Yeah, it says it does not typically involve leaving the battlefield, so that's cracked. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's all going to come down to whatever these bending abilities are. Now, if they make it where it's like a mechanic, like how the Lord of the Rings, like tempting, like you had to cast certain things in order to be tempted, and it puts the burden count, like the not burden counters, or maybe it is, but whatever the fuck it is. Whenever the ring tempts you, it does all these different things based on if the creature actually swings through and gets it. Like maybe that's how they're gonna do it. But I like the way we just talked about it. So what if it's like waterbending is just you cast a blue spell, you cast a green spell, you cast
no, that might actually be it. But what would the firebend? How would that trigger that? That would be cracked because I mean it makes sense. He's all the colors. He's everything but sand. So sand's black.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean this immediately, if it's pretty good, it just replaces like the 4-color Omnath, right?
Yeah, probably.
And then maybe that is what it is.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Again, it's all speculation. We don't make this shit up. We make this shit up just as we go, but we have no decision-making power in any of this. I'm just, we talked about this before we recorded. I'm just pissed that it's firebending 2.
Instead of airbending.
Instead of airbending. Like, I know you were watching the fucking clip of the final fight in the series, but like, he's an airbender. Come on. Like, why would it not be airbending? And I know that it's like a picture of him in the full-on avatar state, and he has all the elements going on at the same time, but fuck. Come on, Wizards. Like, he's an airbender. And then someone that's really passionate I don't even know that much about the fucking show. I just know that at least, and it's just like, why the fuck is it this way? Someone's gonna get in the comments and just be like, "No, you're fucking wrong. And this is how it needs to be." And then
I feel like people are going to be really passionate about this, but
I hope that people are passionate in the same way that I'm passionate about it, and that going, "Why the fuck is it firebending instead of airbending?"
I think that it's funny that you're the things that bother you and keep you up at night are the lore. It's the lore thing.
It's the lore things, and I typically don't give a fuck about it, but
no, that's funny. I did just watch Spice 8 Rex full video on like the entire lore of Magic the Gathering in like 80 minutes or whatever, and so I do think it's funny. It's like the lore was really, really, really good, and now people are like a little bit disappointed. So I hope that we can, if they're going to be bringing all the Universes Beyond stuff into the format, I hope they're at least like not fucking up the lore for the Universes Beyond stuff too. But we'll see.
They probably will.
But no, but this is sick. I think this will be cool. I don't know that I'm going to be playing an Aang deck, but I could definitely see you playing an Aang deck.
I would definitely play an Aang. If it works exactly the way that we just talked about it, and I could just like flip every single turn, and then like I have all these cards in hand, how do I not win? Unless you're Travis, but fucking Notion Thief. Yeah, if you haven't watched our most recent gameplay, go watch that, and you'll know what we're talking about. Yeah, but
this card gets eaten alive by Notion Thief. Because all the draws are forced draws.
Fuck it. Just make it to where you're going to build, like, deck them out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because then you could just loop the same thing. You just loop. Yeah. That's funny.
So, I mean, that's kind of cool. Yeah. I mean, but that is the only thing that they've spoiled from Avatar. They haven't really... That we just had the card and nothing else. So, we could be watching this back, closer to the end of the year. It'd be like, we... Fuck that.
We're so far up. Turns out Aang's like not even good in casual or something, He's like awful. People go, yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. This card's trash. And we're just like, well, let's use what we originally said.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I mean, other than that, the only other thing that they made an announcement on, there's two last things, but we can go over them very quickly. It's a new format. It's a new drafting format. Just to kind of continue doing that. And I think where that does maybe serve some relevance is like if these are like very quick time side events at like bigger like cEDH events, like any kind of the cons, or if like 10Ks, 20Ks have these side events going on, if people drop out or whatever, they could participate in something like this. Just go by really quickly. So I think that's cool as an option. And then they also released some dates for next year. It looks like they're going to do Vegas again, May 1st through the 3rd, Amsterdam, July 17th through the 19th, and Atlanta, November 13th through the 15th. So that's close enough to us. We might get the chance to go to that one.
Yeah, that'll be right after your birthday, right?
Yeah.
There we go.
Fuck. I'll be 34 then.
Old as fuck.
Old as fuck.
That's right, son.
Oh, and they announced some like Pro Tour events, but that's really it. I think those are the big announcements and our kind of speculation type stuff on what they released this past weekend from MagicCon Vegas.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be neat. I'm excited to see what comes from like the Universes Beyond stuff. I'm glad that they're like giving us some spoilers. I'm hoping. I know that some people are disappointed because they enjoy the Magic lore and they want more Magic specific sets, and I can definitely understand where they're coming from. But I do think also from a standpoint of like getting people into the format, I think the Universes Beyond stuff is pretty good. I think that I've had even my neighbor. I'm not even joking. They literally saw the Avatar stuff. They're like, dang, I might have to get into Magic, and I was like, yeah. So I mean, there's been a lot of people that are wanting to get into the game because of these cards, and hopefully it's just something to draw people to the format, and then that gives the current players that have been in the game for a while, then it gives us the opportunity to like show them and teach them about the current Magic like lore and meta and stuff. I didn't realize how rich the lore was until I actually like sat down and started to like deep dive into it a little bit and look at it. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Like it makes you look at some of the cards a little bit differently.
Right.
But so I think it's cool. I think that this is fun, and I'm just excited to see where like Wizards goes with this. I am curious to see how the timing for everything. Like I'm curious to see if they get a little bit crazy with new stuff. and accidentally print something that's like immediate ban worthy next year. Like if they're just like, hey, well, we're gonna do an update to the brackets and bans and stuff. So like maybe we can like test something. You know, I'm curious to see if something like that happens. Like maybe that's what Aang is. Maybe Aang is made to be just fucking cracked, and they're gonna be like, if it's a problem, we'll ban it.
Yeah.
Or we'll throw it on the brackets. So I don't know. But I am curious to see how everything goes. I'm excited.
Yeah, I am too. So I mean, only time will tell on some of this stuff, and you know whether we're gonna be right, or we're gonna be wrong on it. Did you make a comment a few weeks ago of like anytime we make a take on something, like
Our takes are pretty good. I said that.
they can be at times. Yeah,
I think that our takes are pretty solid. We're not like foolproof. We're not. I mean, we don't
absolutely
ever get everything right. But a lot of times we've said some shit, and it's been pretty accurate.
Fuck Trouble with Bears.
Fuck that card. That card sucks.
So, I mean, with that being said, let us know what your takes are from MagicCon Vegas. What you are excited for from like some of the things either we discussed or some of the things maybe we didn't talk about today. Let us know in the comments. And other than that, like, subscribe, and as always,
go play some cEDH.
what?
I always pause there so that I can
Yeah. For the
I
music.
must wait 13 seconds before I say anything else. No. Just, wait.